Gal Gadot is not the type to start drama. She doesn't do exposés, doesn't shade people online, doesn't chase headlines. Her presence in Hollywood has always been defined by strength tempered with grace, a quiet power that commands attention without ever needing to raise her voice. So when Gal sat down for a reflective interview about leadership, loyalty, and collaboration in the industry, no one expected her to break the silence surrounding one of the most carefully managed reputations in Hollywood. But that's exactly what happened. She didn't name Blake Lively directly. She didn't have to. With deliberate pauses, piercing clarity, and a single chilling sentence. Sometimes, women who speak about lifting others are only building platforms for themselves. She unmasked a betrayal that had haunted her since it happened. And just like that, Blake Lively's illusion of sisterhood began to fracture. Not through scandal, but through quiet truth. With a collaboration, a global fashion campaign designed to celebrate women in power, Gal Gadot and Blake Lively were pitched as the perfect pair, both stylish, articulate, iconic in their own lanes. The brand called it elegance, east to west. It was about unity, global representation, and modern womanhood. To Gal, the idea felt right. She was eager to show a different side of herself. Not Wonder Woman, but the woman behind the warrior. Blake was friendly, enthusiastic, deeply involved. She made jokes on set. She called Gal sister. She posed side by side in every behind-the-scenes shot. And Gal believed her. They shared stories, spoke on panels, supported one another in interviews. Or so Gal thought. But what she didn't realize at the time was that the bond was being used. That the alliance she thought she was building was, in truth, being manipulated behind her back, reduced to a stepping stone in Blake Lively's ongoing campaign to control every frame, every headline, every narrative. What looked like mutual empowerment on camera was anything but behind it. The campaign had been pitched as a shared spotlight, equal focus, two stories, two faces. But very early into production, things started shifting. Gal noticed that scripts for promo videos were being revised, always in ways that subtly elevated Blake's role. Their scenes were scheduled together, but Blake's solo segments got more time. The makeup team spent hours perfecting Blake's looks, while Gal was rushed through styling with phrases like, "Natural is best on you." When Gal brought it up gently, she was told that edits were simply being made to improve pacing and cohesion, that everything was being handled with respect. She believed them, until the official trailer dropped, and she was in it for less than 4 seconds. Blake, on the other hand, narrated the whole thing. That was the moment Gal realized something deeper was happening, that this wasn't a shared campaign at all. It was a Blake Lively brand moment, and Gal had unknowingly signed on as a supporting act in someone else's carefully curated performance.
The signs became harder to ignore. Gal's quotes, once confirmed for the press kit, were removed without explanation. When she asked her team why her statements weren't included in the launch article, she was told the brand had gone in a more singular direction. Her talking points were allegedly too global, too abstract, not as emotionally relatable, but the truth was simpler. Blake didn't want to share the mic. Even during the campaign's rollout, joint interviews were quietly canceled. Requests to feature both women together were redirected to Blake's team. Gal was thanked, praised, and then neatly pushed off the page. It wasn't confrontational. It was cold. She had been minimized, repositioned from co-star to co-sign, and by the time the brand's final billboard dropped, Gal was nowhere to be found.
Look, put like this. Put it yeah, more like this, exactly.
That's quite nice, though.
You need to go back, yeah.
What Gal didn't see at the time, but what insiders later confirmed, was just how active Blake's team had been in reshaping the campaign. Emails leaked from internal marketing meetings showed that Blake's reps had raised repeated concerns about narrative clarity. That Gal's accent, her international identity, and her powerful, direct speaking style might confuse brand messaging. A source close to the campaign said, Blake requested all copy be rewritten to focus on one voice, hers. Another source claimed Blake's team suggested that Gal's popularity might overshadow Blake's positioning as the emotional anchor of the campaign. It wasn't about the brand. It was about control, and every decision, every silent removal, every redirection. It all added up to one goal, making sure Blake stood alone.
I never really wanted to talk about politics. I kind of tried really, really hard to avoid it.
Gal never lashed out. She didn't call names, but in that now infamous interview, she chose truth over politeness. When asked what she'd learned about female collaboration in Hollywood, she paused, looked down for a second, and then said, "I've learned that not everyone who uses the language of sisterhood is acting in good faith. Some people talk about empowering others when really they're just building taller pedestals for themselves. Sometimes those betrayals don't scream, they whisper." The interviewer didn't press. They didn't have to. The silence that followed said it all. Gal didn't need to name her. The people watching already knew.
Middle child was a bit disappointed that I wasn't Snow White.
The clip exploded across social media, and behind the scenes, it lit a fire under people who had stayed silent for years. A former stylist who'd worked with Blake posted a cryptic message: "It's always the one who preaches unity." A magazine. Editor liked a tweet comparing Gal's quiet strength to Blake's performative charm. A brand rep reposted Gal's interview with the caption, "This, all of this." But what mattered more was the Whisper Network becoming a chorus. Women who had worked with Blake in campaigns, films, press events began confirming similar experiences, being subtly sidelined, having their voices softened, watching themselves fade out of shots they were promised would feature them equally. No lawsuits, no scandals. Just erasure over and over again. And finally, someone, Gal, had spoken out.
You have a baby at home, and you have a baby on the way. Congratulations.
What makes you say that?
The shark told me.
Food is probably the most central part of my life, food and family, but those are completely
Blake's team responded in the only way they knew how, with charm. Legacy content flooded the timeline. Old interviews about marriage and motherhood resurfaced. Posts of her baking for crew members went viral again. Carefully curated nostalgia, but the timing was too obvious, and the world was too alert. People began revisiting old content with new eyes. That empowering campaign Blake led, now viewed as an act of co-star erasure. Her uplifting quotes, questioned, her carefully constructed image. Cracking brands abroad began pulling back. A luxury campaign in Paris delayed its release. A Middle Eastern sponsorship dropped Blake quietly from promotional materials. PR firms overseas began advising clients to avoid proximity, because when someone like Gal Gadot speaks softly but with conviction, the world listens.
Love again.
I pray that isn't true. There's a wonderful, big...
Gal didn't scream. She didn't accuse. She didn't fight dirty. She simply told the truth, and that truth cut deeper than any scandal ever could. Blake Lively had spent years building an image of polished empowerment, a woman who smiled at press junkets and posted about lifting others up. But underneath it, Gal revealed something more familiar to many women in the industry: the polished performer who speaks of unity while ensuring they never share the light. Now, those secret betrayals aren't buried in silence anymore. They're part of the conversation. And Gal? She didn't just unmask a false narrative. She reminded everyone that grace, when paired with truth, is the most powerful weapon of all.